The story of Gaudy Night centers around women and men's roles, and especially in higher education. When we started the book, we noticed that the poltergeist was attacking Harriet Vane. She presumed specifically her and then realized it was over the whole women's college. The poltergeist seemed to be attacking women from an anti-feminist stance, and so much of the evidence pointed towards a man. Unfortunately, what comes to be revealed is that it is a woman who does not agree with the feminist movement, who does not agree with women's rights. We have to remember the setting of the story. Sayers herself had come down from Oxford in 1915, did not receive her degree until 1920 because it was not permitted to give women degrees until then. She was not able to vote until she was 30 years old, until 1928. And so Sayers recognizes that this book being written in 1935, there were quite a few women who still disagreed with women's education and women's rights. And one of those women in the story is Annie, the scout who has been attacking everyone, who we were able to talk with earlier on in the story. And if you paid attention, you would have spotted as our culprit. It seems a great shame to keep up this big place just for women to study books in. I can't see what girls want with books. Books won't teach them to be good wives. Some of these clever ladies are a bit queer, don't you think, madam? No heart in them. I always think of what it says in the Bible about much learning hath made thee mad. It isn't a right thing. So Annie has given away her position to Harriet Vane earlier on in the story when she presupposes the distinction between the heart and the brain, which of course Miss Lydgate and Vane then put back together, but that if you have brains, there's no heart in these queer women, and that if they have much book learning, they won't have much faith. And if they study books too much, they won't be able to be good wives. And so this kind of dichotomy that has really troubled Harriet throughout the novel, Annie brings forth as her major concern as well, that she finds these things irreconcilable. And that's why she begins to attack the characters in the story. Now, she attacks them from an illogical response to a tragedy that occurred in her own life. When Miss Devine, earlier in the story, admitted that Miss Devine discovered a man had falsified his research and even kept the source that defied his research claims, and she was able to locate this, she disparaged his reputation so much that he killed himself and left behind his wife and his 2 children. And when we meet Annie, she has had some misfortune in which she has lost her husband. He either killed himself or something, no one knows, and she only has her 2 children. So there are definitely some links that we can make that the reader can figure out even before the characters in the novel who it is that we might be talking about. So the antagonism between Annie and Miss Lydgate are the primary focus of the problem, but Annie, instead of seeing the problem with her husband and the poor scholarship that he made, attacks all women who are like Miss Lydgate, who are disparaging men, who are making these moves towards scholarship at the loss of their heart, at the loss of caring about these families, caring about this men. And yet, at the same time, I think what Sayers is trying to also point out is that if a man had attacked another man's scholarship, no one would have attacked that man as being heartless. They would have just seen it for what it was, which was a disagreement between scholarship. However, because a woman had the high standard of scholarship and didn't have the heart that women should have, quote unquote, are assumed to have, she looks like she's not being a woman. And this becomes the problem in the text. Sayers is always trying to ask the question, if a man did these same things, what would we think about them? Why do we not hold the same standards between men and women? What you have to look at in Annie's confession is her assumptions of the difference between men and women and what they are made for. That there is a certain defined role, there's a certain defined nature, and that it's not human nature, it's female nature that is the guiding force for what a person is supposed to be, is according to their gender. When she confesses to being the poltergeist, and actually almost killing Miss Lydgate and Miss Vane, She says, "A woman's job is to look after her husband and children. I wish I had killed you. I wish I could burn down this place and all places like it, where you teach women to take men's jobs and rob them first and kill them afterwards. No wonder you can't get men for yourselves and hate the women who can. God keep the men out of your hands." So there's kind of a hysterical confession here that really embodies the other side of Sayers' argument, in which she sees and tries to understand somewhat what this could lead to, kind of a false sense of what women are for and what men are for. But we don't end with the confession. We don't end with the violence. We don't end with the separations between genders, but with marriage. And as Chesterton said, this is where all things should end. And similarly, Dante, which was a heavy influence on Sayers, this is where you should end. You should end in the happily ever after, in the comedy to which the Christian story points, which of course is uniting rather than separating. And so we have, after 3 books, the long-awaited connection between Peter Wimsey and Harriet Vane. Miss Devine tells Harriet, "You needn't be afraid of losing your independence," which of course, since the beginning of the novel, we've seen has been the problem for Harriet. She is afraid that the inequality will make her dependent upon Peter. He will always force it back on you. If you ever find any kind of repose with him, it can only be the repose of a very delicate balance. And this is what Sayers has been looking for: harmony and balance. And harmony is epitomized in the concert that they're listening to. And she watches Peter enjoy the concert, and she recognizes that he can hear the intricate pattern, each part separately but inseparable, moving under and over and through, heart and mind together. And we have the reconciliation between the brains and the heart. We have balance and harmony, but not one on top of the other, but an intricate role, an intimate role that looks very much more like Christ in the church, or what Sayers would have seen in Dante, and what Sayers would have read about maybe a little bit in Chesterton. When Peter proposes for the last time, he bares his head, he submits, right? We have this reciprocal sense of belonging, reciprocal sense of submission here, and he says, "Placet ne magistra," and she says, "Placet." And of course, will it not please you, my teacher? It will please me, or it pleases me. And this is it's a good type of proposal to end a campus novel with. Sayers herself was at a ceremony while she was during her time at Oxford, in which she witnessed the conferring of honors upon the students. And the vice chancellor would say, "Placet ne," blah, 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 right? And then, of course, would be responded to, "Placet." And it would be back and forth. And that was how you conferred honors upon the graduates. And here you have marriage being proposed as the same kind of conferring of honor upon one another. And ending with this idea also of, does it please you, or does it not please you, my teacher? It pleases me. And so it's this sense of subverting the roles, subverting the expectation, and yet tying into the larger context that makes this kind of a beautiful ending and a very literary story for us to read from Sayers.